Good morning, everyone. It's time for one more episode of SpriteKit How Do I, this time just with 3 quick examples of what you've asked me for help doing as you build your SpriteKit games. The first example is how do you build a timer? As you can see, we have a timer in the top left corner counting down to 0, and then when the timer hits 0, we get a game over sprite. We have some of the same stuff as usual, creating a timer sprite as a label node. I create also a variable called time left, and that's where I store the time that is left that is counting down. And so, as I said, we're just setting all the properties, adding it to the screen, and then I am decreasing time left at the start. And this makes it so that the behavior of my timer is exactly the way I want it. There's only one place when I am doing anything for this countdown timer, and that's inside the did finish update, because after a certain number of frames, I want to decrease the time that's left. So if frame count is greater than 50, I set frame count to 0. I set the text property on that sprite to say the new time, and then I'm constantly doing that. If time left is 0, that means time has run out. And that's the situation where I want to create the game over sprite. I set it right in the middle, and I add it to the scene. If time left is not equal to 0 and the frame count is greater than 50, I just want to decrease time left by 1. So this means every 50 frames of the game, I'm going to decrease the time left variable, and that's going to be reflected in the text sprite at the top left corner. This is how I am checking every frame. If my frame count isn't 50, just add 1 to the frame count. The second example is very specific to one of the things that a student asked me, and this was, how do you actually refer to a sprite that is a child of another one? And so in this example, I've created a circle, and I've created a text sprite, and I've added the text sprite as a child to the circle sprite. Now, the idea is pretty simple. If I touch the screen, I want to change the text of the child sprite to just say touched. But the way I have to do this is a little tricky, because I need to use this line of code, which uses some conditional binding. Don't worry about the name, but it basically says if there is a child sprite, if you can, get the children of the circle sprite, of which there is 1. So I'm getting the first child of the circle sprite. And so if I can, store that as the variable child sprite. And I need to do this, I need to say that it needs to turn this new sprite, if it can find it, as an SK label node. And that is so that I can access the text property, change its value. It is unlikely that this is going to be needed by more than a couple of you. If this is something you want to implement, let me know and I will help you out. The last thing that I want to help you with is, one of you asked, how do you make it so that when a sprite is moving up, like a character bouncing between platforms, what's an easy way to make it so that you turn off the physics body so that the character can pass right through the platform? I showed you this in my Bubble Bobble example in the 80s walkthrough. So this is a pretty straightforward scenario. You can see as this goes up, it passes right through that top platform, but otherwise when it's moving down, it acts like a regular physics body. There's a lot of code here. Most of it is just setting up physics bodies on the marble and the platforms, and also I'm using a contact event on this platform stop to know when the ball actually hits it, so that we know when to lift it back up. But the actual code that I'm using to turn off the physics body is right here. So if you want if you don't want a sprite to have a physics body when some condition of your game is true, you can set its collision bit mask to 0, and that's a very easy way to make it so that it doesn't collide with anything in your game. And so what I am doing is I'm making it so that when the marble hits this stop, I'm lifting it up, I'm setting its velocity to 200, so it's moving up. And I'm setting its collision bit mask to 0. Once that position gets above 450, I'm turning the collision bit mask back on so that the physics starts up again and it rolls down the platform. So the key thing is, if you ever want to turn off collisions on a specific sprite, you can use this little trick, set collision bit mask to 0. When you don't want it to run into things, just make sure that you set it back to 1 or whatever category you're using for when you do want the physics to turn back on. And that's it. Good luck putting together your games. I will see you next time.